and of course, Fran Drescher. Please join us, Fran, who we all know and love. Hi. Yes. Fran is a global celebrity, of course, but also a global ambassador for wellness and health, and a real change maker and an innovator, and founded Cancer Schmancer, which I had the pleasure to be part of early on, and has only grown and sustained and gotten bigger and better, and is so incredibly important. So please make sure you go to cancerschmancer.org and learn more about that, because everyone can be a part of it, right, Fran?
Yes, of course.
Okay, everyone, have fun.
All right, good morning. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be with you. As was said, my name is Claire Fox. I'm the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Food Policy Council. I'm so excited to have the privilege of interviewing the one and only Fran Drescher this morning. That's a good idea. I'm going to take this out, too.
Yeah, it's a little...
So I've always been a fan, but I was blown away when I really dug into your history around food and health advocacy. And you've really made this your personal mission.
Yes.
And you see it as more than just, the nonprofit or talking points. It's really a movement. So
totally.
Can you talk a little bit about how you got into food, where your passion comes from?
Well, as a 18-year well cancer survivor, thank you. Over the course of, those years, I really started to ask hard questions that I didn't think the medical community was really paying attention to, and why we get sick. Right now, most Western medicine is reductionist medicine, which comes out of war, which makes a lot of sense. If a soldier is shot up, you got to go right to the site of the wound, patch him or her up, and either put him back out on the front lines or send them home. But in terms of chronic illness or other kinds of diseases, just going to the end symptom is not really very productive. And so I started to look at causation and why are we getting sick? Why are people getting cancer? And let's identify the cause and eliminate it. And the more I dug into that, and I started by writing the New York Times bestseller, Cancer Schmancer, because I didn't want what happened to me to happen to other people by means of misdiagnosis and mistreatment. It took me 2 years and 8 doctors to get a proper diagnosis of uterine cancer. I got in the stirrups more times than Roy Rogers. And so eventually I realized the book was just the beginning and not the end of what's now a life mission. And so the Cancer Schmancer movement came out of that, because I started to see, after speaking to thousands of people across the nation, that what we don't know is killing us. The questions we're not asking is not serving us well. And frankly, the lifestyle that we are all living, for the most part, is completely unsustainable. And we're slipping down a rabbit hole towards our own demise. But the good news is there's a lot of big business pharmaceutical companies that are getting very rich. And there's a lot of money in sickness, not as much in wellness. So, if you approach life that way, you'll start to question the status quo more. And I did that. That's my thing. I try and challenge the status quo and come up with a new system, a better system. And that's why I feel like I got famous, I got cancer, and I live to talk about it. So I'm talking. Once you wake up and smell the coffee, it's hard to go back to sleep. Well, what are we eating? That's like the most major element to how our bodies function. You are what you eat. And this year, we're actually on Tuesday, the 23rd, we're at the Dorothy Chandler with the Fran Drescher Masterclass Health Summit. So if you want to extend the knowledge that you're learning here and come see me and a collection of unbelievable doctors who I have cherry-picked, these people went to medical school, drank the Kool-Aid, started practicing in traditional medical institutions, began to challenge the status quo, began to question whether there might be a better way, and then got woke and reinvented the wheel. And what we're going to do is blow your mind. And this year's theme is how you live equals how you feel. You don't feel well, start looking at how you live. Do not try to suppress your symptom and muzzle your body of the very whispering information it's trying to give you. It's unhappy. Don't suppress the symptom. Start asking, what are you doing to make your body unhappy? Honor your body. Use your purchasing power. You know, we may not have as much influence in Washington as we would like to, because most of the elected officials are beholden to big business, deep-pocketed lobbyists. But where you do wield a lot of power is in your purchasing power. Your consumerism speaks louder. What you buy, and for that matter, what you don't buy, is not only your vote, but also your protest. So become a mindful consumer, not a mindless consumer. If we all collectively stop drinking colas today, they'd stop making it tomorrow, that fast. You don't need regulation or anything. The bottom line is greed. So hit them where they live. Force them to be responsible in their manufacturing.
Thank you. Yes. So, speaking of challenging the status quo, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're most concerned about when it comes to food in our food system?
I appreciate you asking that, because the thing that I speak about over and over again is to boycott industrial farms. Industrial farming is the worst thing that's ever happened to our food supply, and we must put them out of business. The 20th century was filled with big business industrialists and chemical companies and war chemicals and agrochemicals, and somehow all of that got repurposed onto civilian life. And stop buying it. Put them out of business. One of the most egregious things is glyphosate, and that is the weed killer that is also found in GMOs, and it's water soluble, which makes it so dangerous, because it goes into the ground, it goes into our water system, it goes into the air. It is everywhere. It is so pervasive and so toxic and so unnecessary. So you have to really start questioning, what am I eating? Because do you really want to eat an animal that's living a Dickensian life and being fed GMO grain and hormones and antibiotics? That's what you're eating. If you're going to eat an animal, then make sure that animal is living the way God intended it to live. Out in pastures, out in the sun, out in the fresh air, free to roam. Because the only reason to eat an animal is to ingest the massive amounts of healthy soil that animal is eating from the grass that it's, out in pasture eating. Soil, we need to eat healthy soil. We're too freaking clean. And there are elements of the soil that we need, frankly. We are of this earth. And somewhere along the line, the human has got this idea that everything is here for our benefit and we can control it and change it and fix it and make it so that it accommodates us. And this whole concept of convenient, modern, fast, forget it. Everything old is new again. Start reading labels. At Cancer Schmancer, we have the Detox Your Home program. Detox your home because the home is the most toxic place we spend the most time in and ironically have the most control over. We ask you to take the in, on, and around you challenge. What are you putting in your mouth? If you're eating a strawberry that's not organic, you might as well be eating a sponge soaked in pesticides. What are you putting on your body? All your personal care items. What are you putting, all your oral hygiene? If your toothpaste says, do not swallow or call poison control, throw that away. Toothpaste should be like food. All ingredients, whether you're cleaning, gardening, eating, should be nothing more than what might have grown in your grandma's garden, period, end.
Right on. So we're here at the Food Tech and Wellness Summit, which I think is a really unique intersection of spaces, and obviously technology has played a huge role in revolutionizing our food system, as you talked about, in the 20th century, and it will continue to do so. And there's a lot of emerging trends around technology. What are you seeing that you're excited about, that you're hopeful about, and is there anything that you're concerned about?
What I'm excited about is when I see responsible manufacturers that really do care about the end product and the consumer. Those are rare gems. What I'm concerned about is when we talk about technology, I don't see a lot of evidence of the leaders in that space interested in anything more than leveraging technology to make a lot of money, frankly. And what I'm constantly speaking about, in fact, I just came from a big cannabis and science event in Portland, Oregon, is to implore that industry not to follow in the footsteps of irresponsible 20th century industrialists, because we're in the 21st century and we're only 18 years into it. And so what happens now at the beginning of a century historically sets the trajectory for the next 100 years. 100 years ago, we were sitting around rooms like this, women trying to get the vote. So a lot can happen in 100 years, and the choices that we make now should not echo the past, but leave a trail for the future. And everything we have to look at differently. I'm not really, I actually think that we have to start dialing things back. Too much has been introduced that's wasn't really carefully thought out, and we have to think about that. We talk about technology. I mean, I turn the Wi-Fi off in my house every night. Last thing I do before I go to bed, because that is discombobulating our natural energy field, especially during the hours when we're supposed to be regenerating our body. And that's true across the board. There's just, I don't use microwave ovens. I don't understand why anyone would still be using a microwave oven. Those EMFs, first of all, change the molecular structure of the food you're eating. Really? Do we need that? Put an old school frying pan skillet on your stove and heat things up. That's what I do. I got rid of my, microwave oven. That's, again, you are what you eat. Set your standards higher, because almost all of the dis-ease that we're experiencing today is because of the terrible way we're living. So, and obviously food is right there, all the highly processed food. Do you know that if you eat 12 hot dogs a month, and kids that eat 12 hot dogs a month, that's not that much. That's 3 dogs a week of like the normal industrial farmed, manufactured hot dogs. They increase their risk of pancreatic cancer by 20%. Wow. I mean, these kids are eating, drinking soda, and that increases obesity by 300%. It's increasing diabetes, whether it's diet soda or high corn syrup, sweetened and sugar sodas. It increases your risk of diabetes because you're tricking the brain into releasing insulin if it's diet soda. Very high in acid. Cancer loves acid, hates alkaline. So, make that your barometer too. Start thinking about all these chronic illnesses. I mean, when you watch these commercials for pharmaceutical drugs with all these, inflammatory responses, autoimmune responses, that they talk about all these diseases like they're really something that just happens. They don't just happen. They're usually the end stage of a long period of inflammation. So hone in on your body. You are the thermostat of your body. You know when you feel at an optimum. Every single day, that's a balancing act of mind, body, and spirit. Every day, you have to keep yourself in balance. Why? So that your immune system operates at an optimum. If your immune system is compromised because of the foods that you're eating, I mean, why is so many people talking about leaky gut? And leaky gut is at the core of all these inflammatory autoimmune responses. Well, that's the glyphosate and all the chemicals that are in industrial farm foods. So, go wild, go pasture raised, and go organic. Because if you don't go organic, you are asking for it.
Yeah, it's so compelling. I mean, it's so compelling, and I think if everyone could, they would, right? I mean, there's a lot of barriers, and you talked about industry and greed, and that it takes a movement. I really appreciate that, Fran, that it takes a movement to challenge the status quo. Can you talk to us
But again, it's about the bottom line. So, manufacturers really don't want to kill us. They just want to sell us. And they'll sell us anything we're willing to buy, which right now, sadly, is anything. So narrow your selections and dictate to them what you want, and you'll see that there'll be a change. We may end up putting Monsanto out of business, but I'm not mad at that.
And that's the power that we have. And that's
we
the
have
power
all
of
the
this
power.
movement.
We at Cancer Schmancer empower kids because the kids today are the first generation predicted to not live as long as their parents in U.S. history. And we don't want to make that a self-fulfilling prophecy. But they don't pay taxes, they don't vote, so they don't wield a lot of influence in Washington. But they are a multi-billion-dollar spending demographic. And we, and with the help of one of our supporters, Jamie Foxx, did a fantastic education video because we're going to teach them to teach their families and to learn for themselves to not be so influenced by advertising, because they don't care about them. What they care about is money. Money at the expense of all things of true value. You, your family, the environment, the air, the water. I mean, it's sick. They're sociopaths. Don't enable them.
So how else can people get involved in the Cancer Schmancer movement?
You can go to cancerschmancer.org and sign up, and you'll get information from us all the time. You can, which will be very helpful. It's really a fun journey. I mean, it's a new chapter. Just embrace it. And every day, the universe is going to offer you opportunities to take a higher road, to take a better path on your journey of self-refinement. And come to the Cancer Schmancer Masterclass Health Summit at the Dorothy Chandler. You can buy your tickets at cancerschmancer.org/summit, or just go to our regular website, cancerschmancer.org, and you can find that out. And if you can't come, where you would get to meet me and get face-to-face with some of these amazing medical doctors that are totally radicalized, then you can watch it free as a live stream, which you also have to sign on to cancerschmancer.org to have access to that. And eventually it's going to be shown as a free docuseries and then downloadable purchase. So join the movement. Join the movement, because you are the foot soldiers. I can't lead without an army. But we really are on the precipice of a new dawn. And we want to put sickness, the business of sickness, out of business.
Amen. Fran Drescher, thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Warm
My
round of
pleasure.
applause for Fran. So, Fran, I understand you're going to stay for our next panel.
I will.
And we'll continue to dialogue. And I just want to let you all know that we will have a Q&A portion at the end of the panel. But at this time, I'd like to invite up the welcome plenary panelists to join us here at the stage. And we'll just take a moment. I encourage you all to go online and read the biographies of these truly incredible, groundbreaking leaders, chefs. Of course, you can learn more about Cancer Schmancer online and the work that Fran has done. That was just a perfect way to set the tone for today in this conversation.
I'm so
so
glad.
thank you so much. I feel so fired up.
I know. Well,
I'm
we're going to
excited.
forge an alliance now that we've had the
yes.
pleasure of meeting. I have a glass bottle, by the way, people, and I encourage you to think about glass as an alternative to plastic, because if you happen to be worried about global warming, plastic is really driving it more than anything else. It's a petroleum-based product, and every piece of plastic that's ever been manufactured since 1909 is still on this planet. There is no way to get rid of it, and we're being buried alive by it. So give it up.
Right on. All right, gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for joining us. So we have to Fran's right, Chef Bryce Fluellen, who is also the Community Impact Director at American Heart Association. And then to his right, we have, is this Chef Carrie? Yes, hi. We haven't met yet. Hi, Chef Carrie Heffernan. And then to his right, we have Chef Matthew Keeney. So let's give them all a warm welcome. And I'm going to have each one of these gentlemen just go down the line and give you a brief introduction to their work. They're all doing some really incredible and inspiring work in the culinary field and in the field of food advocacy. So why don't we start with you, Chef Bryce?
Yeah, can everybody hear me? Or is this on? You can hear me?
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chef Bryce. I'm a Community Impact Director and Chef, like Clara said, for American Heart Association. So what that means is that I am responsible for driving philanthropic and technical and informational resources to some of our most vulnerable populations here in South LA, East LA, Long Beach, and then also the South Bay. I started came in and started a healthy cookie program. That's how I started with AHA for our kids in those areas from 8 all the way to 18, and so that was almost 5 years ago. So I've been blessed to work with almost 6,000 to 7,000 of our young people throughout the city.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chef Kerry Heffernan from New York, and what I try and help with is creating awareness and legislation around sustainability in seafood. I've been lucky enough to work with two organizations in particular. One is the Environmental Defense Fund, who's really good on the policy side, because that's very impactful. We try and look at issues where we can move the needle and really focus and talk to those legislators and try and create a plea to them from the chef and the food community as to how they can vote eventually on certain topics. On the other side, I work with Monterey Bay Aquarium at Seafood Watch here in California.
Everyone should get the app.
The Seafood Watch app is a very easy way to learn how to see if the fish you're eating is sustainable. So there we're talking more about awareness on the consumer side as well as the chef industry side, because we try and convince more and more restaurants to basically have what they call green rated menus for the sustainability of their fish. And also I cook a little on the side.
We've heard. All right, thanks for being here. Chef Matthew.
Good morning. I'm Matthew Kenny, also from New York, but moved to Los Angeles about 8 years ago. My company focuses on innovation in the plant-based space. We have a number of our own restaurants. I think we're in 10 countries now, but our focus is really on the innovation aspect of it, which we've applied to education products. We're starting to work with hospitals and organizations like that, hospitals and schools, to bring plant-based options into their institutional programs. So technology is definitely a part of that in some ways, and just great to be here.
Awesome, wonderful, thank you. We're happy that you're here. So I'm just going to kick some questions to each of the panelists. We'll sort of keep it moving in a dynamic conversation. Then we'll open it up, and each of the panelists can sort of respond to each other, and of course we'll get your questions as well. So Chef Matthew, I'd like to start with you. Talk to us about why you think the future of food is plant-based.
Well, I come at it from the chef's perspective, so unlike other companies might get into plant-based we support and are passionate about environment, about health, about animal rights. Those are all passions for mine, but the driving factor for how we approached this was because I really truly believe that plant-based is the most exciting way to eat, and everybody's a pleasure seeker, and if it's prepared properly in the right hands with the right training and education, we actually can enjoy food more than we ever have, because we can consume delicious, beautiful food that also makes our body feel good, makes the universe feel good. So I sort of had that light bulb moment 15 years ago, and I felt like it was complete alignment with how we are supposed to live. And I'm very open-minded about non-plant-based options, but that's our mission, because I really believe in it that strongly. And I think that we're starting to see, a lot of traction and a lot of people getting a lot of benefits from it. So I feel
Awesome.
like if we listen to ourselves, and we'll keep going in that direction.
And as a follow-up, since we're at the Food Tech and Wellness Forum here, there's a lot of plant-based proteins coming onto the marketplace right now. If folks are from LA, you'll know that Beyond Meat opened up this huge research and development facility in Manhattan Beach. So there's a lot of science and technology going into thinking about how do we supplant animal-based proteins with plant-based proteins. And there's some controversy to it as well. And I would love for you to say, kind of share your thoughts on the matter. Are you excited? Are you concerned? What do you see going on?
Well, I'm excited about the attention to the space. It brings attention from consumers, from the media, from financial institutions. It's not, we're pretty much strictly plants. I mean, everything we do is plants and unprocessed within our market. But I think it's great for anyone who's transitioning, who still wants that flavor experience. From a health perspective, I'm not sure I'm personally there. I've tried everything, and I've tried some delicious things, but I definitely find that it's easiest and most natural for me and the people that I work with to really just stick to unprocessed in general, organic, unprocessed, local whenever possible.
Did you want to respond to that, Fran?
Yes, thank you. I totally agree with the chef. I question, is the plant that you had, the manufacturing plant that you had talked about, is that the company that Bill Gates bought?
I'm not sure.
Okay, because, people don't really realize that Bill Gates, who is a big proponent of GMO plants, owns a piece of Monsanto. And what comes across as this kind of do-gooder concerned about feeding the planet is actually greed-driven. And I agree with the chef that, eat whole foods that grew in the earth. You don't need a million things that are trying to make believe it's something else. It's like, that's just,
I think it's great that we're critically thinking about this, right? Because I think technologies are going to continue to take off, and a lot of people are looking for alternatives for their own health and for the well-being of the environment, but then there's also a lot of marketing gimmicks. And if we follow the money all the way back, who's really benefiting ultimately? And is it what it seems? So I love that we're laying that foundation of critical thinking. And another area where there's a lot of misconception and confusion is around seafood. Chef Carrie, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about just your advocacy work around sustainable seafood. I know, for example, because of advocacy work that's happened, there's a little bit of this conception now that farmed fish is bad, wild caught is good, always. But I understand there's more to it than that. There's more complexity there. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question that there's some confusion and that it's not necessarily all that easy to decipher. And the simplest thing you could do is to download the app, the Seafood Watch app, because it would explain it all to you. But in sort of broad terms, there are both populations of wild fish and populations of farm-raised fish that are actually good. On the farm-raised side, it depends on obviously the methods that they use, the feed that they introduce, and then their impact on the environment. There's something called recirculated aquaculture systems that is basically an enormous donut, and they put basically sterile water in. They make salt. So it's a saltwater environment. So the fish never need antibiotics. They never get diseases. No diseases are brought in, so they can entirely control the environment. So they feed them, and then they obviously filter the water to make sure that it's all clean, that excess food and effluent isn't in there. But there's a way that you could have a farm-raised fish that has zero impact on the ocean. And they're even coming up with ways to basically feed them all plants, because one of the problems with farm-raised fish is that they might put 5 or 6 pounds of essentially bait fish in to get a single pound of fish out. And that used to be the case in the salmon industry. It's less so now. It's certainly with some of the farm-raised bluefin. That would be the issue there. But I think in broad terms, there's lots of great wild populations. There's lots of great wild populations of fish right here in California. I mean, California led the way earlier in September with setting regulations around sword fishing, where they have what they call a deep set buoy that has a lot less bycatch. It's not like the long lines of past that were catching sharks and dolphins and turtles and all these other creatures. And there's also been a lot of progress in what they call the ground fisheries. So the ground fish, the rockfish in the middle of the state has been very well managed and is now open for responsible harvest in this state. So I think sometimes we like to look beyond where we are, and I think it's important to look in. And further to looking in and getting to sort of where plant-based food is, I think the real future is in seaweed. I think if we can sort of look at seaweed to come into our lives in ways that are, I hate to say, Western and non-Asian, because we mostly see them in these Asian formats, but if we eat more of it, and we as chefs would innovate around creating sort of non-traditional ways to utilize it, it is by far one of the most beneficial things in the ocean, and it's one of the things that would be most beneficial to us. It is an ancient plant. It is many, many times older than plant-based life on land, and it functions in a different way, and it gives your body different things. So there's ways to utilize seaweed that I think are great currently, but I think there's a lot of innovation possible there.
Yeah, I love that sometimes the solution is sort of right under our nose and we don't even realize it, or we have to sort of change our perception to see an opportunity. And I think a lot of building a movement is about changing perception and changing mindsets. And so with that, I'm going to take it over to you, Chef Bryce. We have the opportunity to work together. We're friends and colleagues.
Yeah. I know you're tired of me by now.
No, I can never be tired of you.
Okay.
He's the best. So our work at the Food Policy Council is, we believe all communities deserve access to good food, and good food it's nutritious, but it's also grown with respect to the planet and respect to people. And those really are our values. And so it's been a great pleasure to work with Chef Bryce, who is a true community advocate. And as I was saying to Fran earlier, I think a lot of people would choose healthy diets if the options were made available to them. But there are a lot of barriers. There are systemic barriers, there's economic barriers. So Chef Bryce, talk to us a little bit about how you got into this work around public health as a chef, and how you kind of bring it all together. What are you concerned about when it comes to food and health of communities?
Yeah, so I'll start with the latter. I mean, I'm most concerned about the fact that California has the highest poverty rate in the country, and that 1 out of 3 of our children are food insecure here in South LA, because I've seen the implications of that firsthand. So a lot of the kids, I was blessed to be on the program side in the beginning, and I'll give you an example of what that looks like. So I remember one class in particular, so I have 20 slots, and so the science teacher and the health teacher who were actually vetting the application says, we have 120 kids that want to be in the class. And so we need to now interview and see, even though it's going to be a hard process, we need to interview the kids and see why they want to be in the class and make sure it's something that's going to be impactful on both ends. And I remember them saying how difficult it was, because some of the applications and the interviews, the kids were saying things like, well, the only thing we have at home, my mom works 2 jobs, the only thing that we've been eating at home is usually white bread and Kool-Aid, or I have 3 brothers and sisters and I want to help my parents out because my father works 2 jobs and my mother works 2 jobs, and so I want to see how I can be able to make sure that my siblings have a healthy meal. So I'm seeing all that firsthand. So for me, it's really about, like you said, I've had the blessing to be in the class because I've saw that kids who have access to fresh, whole ingredients, they actually love it. And so a lot of people on the outside may say, oh, kids don't want to eat fruits and vegetables, they don't like it. And I've seen the exact opposite, especially when it's something that they have ownership in. So what I quickly learned, Claire, is that I had to do more, and the more was figuring out the systems and the policies and the environmental things that create those barriers. So, when I see that, California, I know people, LA, I don't know if people know this, but LA right now, and I think it was in Zillow and in Curb, they said that we spend more rent than any city in the country right now. And so that's daunting, because when you think about how high the rent is in San Francisco and New York, and you say, oh, so a lot of people say, well, so where's the correlation for that? So the fact of the matter is, if 60 to 70% of a household's money is going to rent, that impacts their ability to eat healthy. St. John's Clinic that we work with, the doctor has been there 20 years, said at no time that he has been there has he seen the rise in diabetes in young people, the rise in high blood pressure. And so when I looked at the article and read further, he said, so for instance, if a person is food insecure, they're just worried about calories. So what they'll do is, for example, there's one patient in the whole week or so, when they were low on money, all they ate was tortillas and soda. And so what that did, obviously, is that increases your blood sugar, which increases your vulnerability to diabetes, to heart disease, to all those things that, obviously being at AHA, we try to prevent. So those are some of the areas and places that are most concerning to me.
So then how do you recommend that people individually, or that we collectively, overcome those barriers so that all people can enjoy a healthy diet?
Yeah, I think it's about, which I did, is really connecting with the people on the ground that are doing the work, like LA Food Policy Council, and really went back to school. I always call you like, I got a master's from you. I didn't pay you yet, though. So I'm always learning, okay, what are those systems and policies that are barriers? So for example, like if you think about, there are over, and we're working on this together at LA Food Policy Council, there are over like 1,300 corner stores in LA. And so when you look at some of the most vulnerable areas like South LA and East LA, we've been working with corner store owners to try to make sure that they can start to provide healthier ingredients, and that can be a touch point for people in those communities. Because a lot of communities are in food deserts, right? So if they can't wait for a grocery store to come. And some people, I always tell people like, hey, it's easy to say how you would eat and what you would eat if you have access to it. But if you are surrounded by processed food, junk food, and your income is limited, you're going to eat what's going to fill you up. And unfortunately, what Fran was talking about with our government, a large part of our subsidies go to those commodities like corn, which goes into high fructose corn syrups, hence why soda is so cheap. but only 5% of the subsidies from the government go to smaller growers that grow fruits and vegetables. So really learning that, and then starting to get involved in driving those shifts in the environment and also policy world.
Right on. Great. Okay, well, this will be my last question, and then we'll open it up. So we've talked about a lot of big issues. We talked about poverty and access to healthy food, the environment, toxins in our environment, toxins in our food, overfishing. There's a lot of solutions. There's a lot of technology coming online. We have to have a kind of critical awareness about it. For each of you, if you can wave your magic wand, what would be your food policy for the country? What would you want to see happen? And speak to your issue area or whatever you would like to see happen. Who'd like to kick it off?
I will.
Fran.
I think that, and this is kind of what you were talking about too, I think that there has to be a complete shift in using our tax dollars to support the family farmer who's organic, and stop supporting, industrial farms. I would like to see an end to industrial farms and bring food into our backyards, into our schoolyards, into our neighborhoods, and into our local communities and our surrounding communities, and make sure that it's clean, clean, clean.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, why don't we just go down the line?
I mean, I could do so many, so what immediately jumps out, so we waste over 40% of our food goes into landfills. So, and I know there's a lot of folks working on this, but figuring out, utilizing technology to decrease waste. I was reading about, there's a newsletter and actually a nonprofit called Seeds and Chips, and they bring people from the tech world together with people from agriculture. So I know there's people, overseas that are working on different apps and utilizing AI and all these technologies to try to decrease that. But if you look at, like I was talking about, food insecurity, a lot of the issues are around distribution and figuring out how to get the food actually to the people who are most vulnerable. So, and particularly the fresh food. So if you go to the traditional model food banks, which a lot of them are moving away from it, it usually was highly processed stuff, that sodas, bread, white bread, chips, all that stuff, because the model or the mindset was that, if someone's hungry, just give them some food, and which obviously, makes it worse on the health outcomes that we're seeing in those areas. So for me, it would just be somebody really figuring out how we can get this food that we're throwing away into people's mouths and stomachs, right?
Yes, right on. Yeah, we always talk about how there's enough food being grown on the planet to feed everyone, but it's a crisis of distribution. Is it getting to where it's needed?
Doesn't LA Kitchen do that? They're like an award-winning nonprofit, wrinkled food for wrinkled people. And every step along the way, they take at-risk people, young people, and they teach them how to work in a commercial kitchen. They buy food that markets might be thinking, okay, my normal customer's not going to want this.
Cosmetically imperfect.
They pay for it, but they pay for it at a discount. Then they teach people how to work in a commercial kitchen, and then they deliver it to people who are elderly and stuck at home. And so it's a complete loop of positivity.
No wasted food, no wasted people.
And it's all healthy food, well prepared.
Yeah, LA Kitchen's great. Definitely check them out. Thank you for bringing them up. Chef Carey.
Sure, I get to go third, so these two wands have been waved and most of the problems of the world have been cured.
Right,
Thank you very much. I would take my wand and bifurcate it into two little mini wands and actually hand them to you and say that your wand that you should wave is to look at what you're eating in terms of sustainability. And do your best to sort of understand what kind of fish you're eating, what impact it has on you, and what impact it has on the planet. The second part of your little wand is to say you need to advocate with your votes, because policy is a large part of what drives the opportunities for some of these fisheries to exist. So I would say use your voice to ask for awareness and to take action.
Right on, thank you. And last but not least,
Starting November 6th.
Absolutely.
Well, my food policy would be an education policy, actually, so that all children from the very first days of starting to learn, and right through our colleges, make as much of an emphasis on educating about where our food's coming from, how it's impacting us individually and the environment, how it's prepared. I just think that needs to be as much of a part of everyone's education as math or English or geometry. And I think that then educated choices will be made automatically, as opposed to us having to use the media or use marketing to get the point across.
Right on. Well, I think we just saved the world with all those magic wands. And the good news is we have about 10 minutes to take your questions. I saw a hand shoot up right over here. So do we have a mic on the floor, or I'm not sure that we do. So go ahead and stand up and project. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself so we know who you are.
Hi, I'm Chef Mayo, and I was here for both parts. So firstly, Fran, I'm like a huge, long-time fan. It's like a dream come true.
Thank you.
Everything you represent, I wrote it all down. It's treats, taking it all in.
Thank you.
I'm also a mom of a 15-year-old daughter, and I love what you're saying, because I have a cooking school in LA, and I also have one in Luca, Italy, where I teach during the summers. And I find it amazing how I can go into the grocery store in Italy, and I can fill it up with fresh fruits, produce, and vegetables to the brim, the whole cart's full, like walk out for $100 with the food, fresh fruits and vegetables. And here, I'm lucky if I can walk out of Trader Joe's or else with like 2 bags. And my daughter, who we're very fortunate and blessed, I cook, we eat from the ground, always says to me, Mom, I don't understand this whole drive-through culture. Why do people eat like that? And just what you're saying is home. It's because that's what they can afford. That is how the dollar stretch for $1.99 McDonald's meal is what they can afford. And it's really, that's something that is kind of tragic, because fruits and vegetables should be available to everybody. It's like, that is something that has to change and shift. So,
Yeah, the local farmers markets, I think we need to be encouraged and supported by local government to go into more inner city neighborhoods. And honestly, it's got so much to do with education also, because I think it's by design to keep certain demographics down. And, but I personally would rather, have kind of rice and beans 6 days a week, cooked every different way, and on the 7th day have an organic chicken, than eat all the crap that is accessible at a 7-Eleven. And nowadays we do have the subway that brings downtown to the west side. And so, with the right encouragement and education, it might be, they might take people who currently don't think they have options, may learn that they have more options than they realize, and in, moving into other spaces or buying specific things, maybe those corner bodegas will start to buy the corn chips that say non-GMO organic, rather than, made with stuff that no human should be eating.
Right here.
Can I use the microphone because
Is there an extra mic?
We'll repeat your question. We can
Yeah,
hear
we
you.
can repeat it.
a long point.
Oh,
What?
you
I
can.
would like to address actually Drescher and Kenny. Can I use a microphone?
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Right there.
I'm a physicist, so I want to address your electromagnetic frequency. You don't use the microwave when you're home. Okay, I guarantee you, in simple words, that this cellular is a microwave emitter.
I totally agree. That's why I said that I turn off Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, we're like in a microwave oven in your home. And also, and you probably know about this, you may have attached to your house right now what's called a smart meter. Are you familiar with that? And the smart meter they call it a smart meter, but it's like the worst thing that can happen to your house. It makes it convenient for your meter reader to not have to come onto your property, but read it from outside of your property, and it turns your house into a microwave oven.
Exactly.
So you could go to low EMF products on Amazon and on, Safari, wherever. And, I got a cage to put on mine that reduces it like 99%. They have them for our cell phones.
Okay. Exactly. My point is that, do you ever see this a palm tree on the freeway or next
Yes.
to the those are microwave antenna for cellulars.
Yeah.
Every food, organic or not, even the water you drink in your glass is being radiated and changed.
You're absolutely correct. There are people that have been diagnosed with such profound disease, and it's been tracked back to their acute sensitivity to EMF, and they have nowhere to live. You cannot escape it. But the more we become aware of this, and the more we start to try and, talk about it, we got to wake up. People are like brain dead.
Did you have a question?
No, my question
Yeah.
was to conclude is that I'll give you an example where I live. There is a huge antenna. The population of bird is down to zero.
Wow.
There are more birds singing in the morning. Why? Because the female is unable probably to hatch any eggs. So fertility issue. And do you notice how many brain issues?
Totally.
we have?
Never put it to your ear,
Here we
the
come.
phone.
What do we do as a scientist, as a physicist? I try to walk around my complex and talk to this powerful mobile company, but there is no education. What you don't
Because that
know-
might cut into someone's profit margin.
Correct. So if people, when I talk, don't know what is a microwave radiation or electromagnetism, we are going back to the fact that we need to educate people in order to make progress in technology, in food, and in wellness.
And you know what? Each one teach one. Each one teach one.
Well, thank you for your comment.
I
We
tell
appreciate it. I
people
want to get
all
a
the
couple more
time, those
questions in
cordless
here.
phones, the cordless phones are more radiation than cell phones.
Education.
We're going to try to get a couple more questions in here. So I see a
This
hand
lady's had
there.
her hand up from the beginning.
Right here in the beginning?
Way back there.
Okay, so we'll go here and then lady in the back.
How you doing? My name is Itzhak Vida. I'm an environmental hip hop artist, producer, MC. I recently just got my PhD in urban ecology. Definitely love Maine. I've been going there for years. I live in Denver, Colorado. We recently received a proclamation from the mayor to basically seeing at the fact that there's all these holidays that are geared towards, a destructive way of eating. So we created like this idea called Keep It Fresh Day, which is influencing environmental hip hop, culinary wellness, mostly plant-based. So on June 14th, we literally made in Baltimore and in Denver, the same way that we got like Halloween and like, all of, these really days that all is pushing, sugar on kids. Like the whole idea that we wanted to do was use environmental hip hop as a way to interact through arts, to talk about addressing climate change, regenerative agriculture, holistic health, obliterating food justice, food justice, and I'm heard, so using hip hop as a medium. Do you feel that art can be a positive way to create social change, addressing climate change as well as plant-based wellness, and including the idea to normalize it? I see a lot of hip hop artists going vegan, and they're like using that as a really big way to influence the next generation. But do you feel like that it is a powerful mechanism and tool? And I'll let you talk to you personally after this.
Clear.
Like I grew up, you were like my nanny as a kid.
Thank you. Yeah, music is a powerful tool for positive messaging. I really applaud you for using hip hop for such a positive effort. It's much better than denigrating women. And there's a great. I just saw this Bob Marley documentary, and God, he was with the same thing, using music to, for the greater good. And it's really positive and powerful, so thank you.
Any other thoughts on the panel? Art, culinary art would count too, right?
I mean, I agree with Fran and everyone else. I mean, art is a powerful medium, right? It changes, it sparks thought, it gives visibility to what, can be. And, we have such a love in our culture for celebrity, period. So anytime, like Fran said, you can use it for good, I always tell kids that they got the power to actually create stuff and be able to mobilize people around issues that impact our everyday life. So I applaud you for that.
Right on, right on.
I might say a much simpler message, and it would be maybe self-serving, but take a kid fishing, because when you go and see what's in the water, you immediately become a steward of that environment. When you see what's happening to it, when you see the levels of filth or dirt, or maybe it's a healthy population, maybe it's actually a success story, maybe you're seeing a place where they have been able to keep the water clean and there are rebounding populations of fish, or you're seeing the bivalves, the mollusks, and the sort of caretakers of that environment, the oysters, the clams, and all those things. We get to raise oysters on the East Coast where I live, and there's an immediate impact with the quality of the water, the nitrogen, the algae, all these various elements that should be there but need to be there in balance. Understanding that balance through the eyes of a child, through the eyes of someone who's got physical interaction is transformative.
The transformation of an experience, actually touching and feeling it yourself. All right, so we're going to go back here.
Yeah, address it as far as driving revenue towards those social programs that aren't being supported by the federal government? Driving access to it? Yeah, I would say that there's a lot that you can do locally. I hate to do this, but you're right here. I'd say plug into somebody like the LA Food Policy Council, and I think once you plug in, you'll find out all the stuff that they're doing on the ground to shift the environment and bring dollars and resources to those type of programs that are going to support people, from urban agricultural to, you can talk about this, Claire, the proposal of decriminalizing street vendors, right? So people who are street vending can have a pathway out of poverty to healthy food at corner stores. There's a lot that we can do locally without the federal government. And then for me also, I'm always looking for like-minded people that are in the private sector to bring and shift dollars to those folks that are needed in the community as well. So it's really about breaking down those silos and looking and working with the folks that have the same mindset as you do, right? Because the fact of the matter is that we live in a global world. We can no longer think as an individual. We have to start thinking collectively. And so for me, that's how I was raised. Like my friends always says, is you don't need to live in a gated community if everybody has a house. So I kind of look at it from that mindset too, right?
Yeah, I would just say one huge opportunity that we all have right now is that, we've talked about small organic farmers and kind of moving beyond industrial ag. We've talked about supporting low-income families. There's one huge federal policy that affects all of that, which is the Farm Bill. Oh, and the Farm Bill is being updated now by Congress. You can probably guess there's a lot of bad things in it right now, but if we lift up our voices and speak with our representatives, we can advocate for small, organic, sustainable, regenerative farming. We can advocate for that low-income families are taken care of and supportive, and about 80% of the farm bill, 80% of it is actually SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, aka Food Stamps Program. And talking about farmers markets and accessibility, we were successful in passing a policy to require all farmers markets to accept food stamps as a means of, so making all of our farmers markets here in LA much more accessible and much more affordable to people who need it most. We're gonna get one more question in. Oh God, this is gonna be so hard, but we will hang out and we could talk after the panel. Susan.
I've got a question. I just want to promote Food Day next Wednesday, so if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, if people want to get more involved in these issues, obviously Tuesday is Fran's Wellness Summit at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. Go to cancerschmancer.org to find out more. Also, the next day at City Hall, just down the street, we're doing our annual Food Day event, which is the largest civic engagement event for food at City Hall. We hope to see you there, and maybe we can now squeeze in an actual question. Go ahead, you've had your hand up for a while.
My name is Monique Lukens, and I've been a vegetarian since 2001, vegan since 2006. And recently I've just been trying to do organic only, and I really think it's more of a suggestion. There are a couple things that the power that you have can really go a long way. Coast to Coast AM, if you ever hear that. You're an awesome show to get on to talk about what you're talking about, millions of listeners. And also, I'm a guest educator in LAUSD, and a couple things that I have done. I've gotten the kids to write letters to their reps to only have organic food served to them in the cafeteria, and now it's going to be a law in California for fruits and vegetables to be in cafeterias, hospitals, and prisons. Jerry Brown just signed that.
Wow.
So we need that to be organic. So if you would, since LAUSD is the second largest school district in the country and it's televised, their board meetings, why don't you collectively go together sometime and talk about the importance of getting organic fruits and vegetables, okay? Because I think that would be amazing. I think we'll listen to you.
Not a bad idea. Well, with that, we're going to have to conclude. Let's give a very warm round of applause to these phenomenal panelists. Thank you, Fran, Bryce, Carrie, and Matthew. We really appreciate your leadership. Enjoy the rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.